Hasbro purge.
My Star Trek 3 glass with the destruction of the Enterprise on it.
The TIE Fighter.
That's apparently their business model.
The Shadow Crew Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in, listening, and or watching. We appreciate you all. And you may have seen we are missing an individual this week. Mr. Chet Maddox is, I think he's NDA'd out of his mind, signing new deals we can't disclose. But it'll be us three this evening to talk about the things that we'd like to talk about again. So a lot of interesting topics in the world of pop culture, entertainment, media, the future of 007. For those of you who did not listen a couple of casts ago, the most iconic action superstar in film, the iconic character of all time. You may want to listen because that ties right into some of the stuff we'll talk about today with Bond. And lastly, some toys updates as well. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So first off, toys. We love toys. We've been digging into the clearance sections. I know, Mr. Storm, you've been rolling up your sleeves. I know Shadowe is constantly updating the channel with finds. But the New York Toy Fair happening over the weekend, it looks like the big players are not showing up to a lot of these conventions, both toy and comic convention. Want to get your thoughts, and also just Dr. Brantley, I know your search for Indiana Jones that don't show up broken or disfigured from Target. But how are you all feeling about toys? Any interesting finds, and what's your thoughts on just like the toy conventions and also comic conventions in general, with a lot of people just not showing up to them? So,
well, I have an update.
We have an
yes.
update.
Club Obi-Wan is still MIA, but I did get another Target exclusive that actually showed up on time when it was supposed to, and that's the Map Room Indiana Jones.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Now, I did see online, because I'm part of these Indiana Jones fan groups, and a bunch of people were saying the exact same thing that happened with my Obi-Wan happened with their Map Room. They were saying, oh, Target just canceled it out of nowhere. I don't know what happened. How can I get it? And also at the same time, people are going to Targets and seeing their clearance rack filled with these toys that there's people that want them and they're not giving them to them. They're throwing them on clearance, which is just losing money for Target. I don't get it, but that's apparently their business model.
Yeah, when I was did a deep dive this week along with Shadowe, and we stay in Southern California, and I'm out more or less in the Inland Empire, and he's in the Long Beach, Los Angeles area. So out here, I was looking for a lot of this stuff because I've heard there were half off sales, especially at the Targets. So there's like 6 or 7 Targets in my vicinity, and I was striking out here. So I noticed when I checked some of the inventories, they were saying things were out there in the LA area or Long Beach area where Shadowe is. And Shadowe was going back and forth to Targets. He was finding stuff. And now the one thing I did, I couldn't find a Club Obi-Wan for you, Dr. Braylon, because I searched. But there was a lot of Marvel Legends on clearance, a lot of the Power Ranger stuff. G.I. Joe, they had like maybe a lot of the Target exclusive Python patrols. But you're right, there was a bunch of like Indiana Jones stuff clearance wise, and I did see the Map Room version, and that was up on clearance at Target too. So I think it's a great Hasbro purge, because it's none of the other toy companies, it's just Hasbro. I noticed though Transformers was not on clearance as much. So Chet, wherever he's at, I think he'd like to know they're paying top dollars for Transformer stuff, but I don't know what's going on with Target in general, because Walmart was not doing sales and purchase like that of the Hasbro items. So maybe Target overreached and ordered way too many for their in-stores. And because they were doing it in stores, they didn't sell them to the community, and they were canceling orders online. And to be honest with you, you're getting half the price of of the value of it right now. You probably should have sent it to the collectors then.
They get these Target exclusives, right? Like they are paying extra money to Hasbro to say you can't sell this anywhere else. We can be the only ones that have it. And then they either don't order enough or they're sending them to the wrong place, you know, because I know tons of people that are looking for them.
Well, you know, Hasbro, I don't know if there's just a problem with them and their big box stores, because the same thing that's happened on the Walmart end when it comes to G.I. Joe and all, because they're doing their I know Target has a fan geek out, and then I think Walmart has their fan version of a sell, kind of like the Target geek out. And Walmart, people are telling me all the time, like, and again, I'm all on the G.I. Joe boards and everything. Guys are saying Walmart is not sending out this Night Force G.I. Joe classified character. I got to cancel. I got to order. So it's the two major box stores that's having problems with this at the moment.
That's so interesting. I will say maybe the Target exclusive is like the damaged box, the damaged shipping box Target exclusive, where you know you can get the corners bent and the figure. Here's the thing. I went hunting for clearance toys recently. I stumbled across a couple of Star Wars figures, the Obi-Wan Black Series. I must have gotten lucky. You know, you get those one-offs, but I was excited to pay a significantly lower price than what they were retailing for. But I did notice one thing, and we've talked about the the packaging, right? That the Marvel figures, the Indiana Jones figures, they're not plastic. You don't see what you're buying; you just see an image. I must have picked up 3 or 4 that had been opened and the figure was gone and it was closed back up. So I feel bad for the retailer because you can't physically see that, right? Like you could just put it back on a peg hook and you think like it's not, there's no shrink. So I'm wondering, if retailers over time are going to say like, well, like what the hell is going on here? Because people are just like snatching these figures out of the box and just like resealing them. So I thought that was interesting, but overall, there's some exclusive discounts that are happening. Was able to go to a Ross recently at the advice of Shadowe.
Check out Ross.
Picked up an Obi-Wan figure for $5, normally $12. So there's some deals out there. I don't know. I think I'm excited to see some of the stuff that hits the shelves really, really soon for the holidays. There's some really interesting figures that are going to be hitting the shelves. But I think right now it's like, a lot of professional collectors, a lot of resellers hit up these stores. They know that typically the back end of September, early October is where you find the deal. So if you got a local Walmart or Target or, one of those places, if you're a toy person, get in there. You might find a deal or two.
Well, the funny thing about it, and I don't know if this is something subconsciously now that I'm seeing on the internet, but when Shadowe was saying, like, go to Ross or go to DD's. Now, all throughout the toy community, I've seen like Ollie's in their back east store. We don't have any in Southern California. But out here, we have Burlington Coat Factory, Ross, DD's. We have different varieties. Now, all of a sudden, since Shadowe put that discount at Ross, I'm starting to see on every other sites popping up. It's like, all the community, especially a lot of the G.I. Joe communities, go to Ross to get this and get this item. And it's $5.99 at the clearance of the G.I. Joe classifieds. And, I don't know, like, again, it could be just that he said something, but now it seems like everybody's now running to Ross now. So I see a video that says Burlington Coat Factory, I know that people are running after listening to what Shadowe's saying now, man.
I've never seen this many coats before.
I will tell you, if you are someone that's looking for the newer Jurassic Park figures, do not pay full retail and take your ass to a Ross or TJ Maxx. There's an abundance of those toys available. I'm not talking about the classic stuff, I'm talking about the last film. If you're looking for dinosaurs and figures, they got them all at 50 to 75% markdown. So that should show you that didn't go well. And also, going to a couple of Ross and TJ Maxx, the newer Buzz Lightyear, there's tons of figures for discount too, because we know nobody wants that bullshit. Everyone wanted, like, Buzz Lightyear is Buzz Lightyear. Don't try to force some alternate version of him down the kids' throats. Now you're sitting on a bunch of toys that nobody wants. So if you're looking for those things, hit the TJ Maxx or the Ross.
At Target, one of the things I did see also online was someone that worked there, and people were returning the boxes, action figure boxes that don't have a window. And the guy opened them up and he said, "Hey, this is not the figure that's supposed to come in this box." And his manager just said, "Don't matter, just take it." So,
you gotta be kidding.
so it's like they don't even care about their own product, what they're taking. It's just like, oh, well, we can just say it's a return and it's broken or whatever, and we can probably, they have something worked out where they send it back and get, some part of the money or something.
Well, that's what scares me about every time I order something from like, Target or Walmart, and it's like the pickup. Not so much when it's initially coming out from like the actual warehouses, but it's the like one where you pick up same day. I have been worried ever since I've seen people starting to switch out characters. And it's like, I just won't order if it doesn't come from like Hasbro Pulse or like a credited toy store like Big Bad or Entertainment Earth. Then I'm really worried about it coming from the retailers, because I've seen people where it was a Dungeons and Dragons. I saw a video online on YouTube where it was a guy tried to open up the Dungeons and Dragons figures, and like several of those were not the actual figures that were inside. So it's a rampant problem. But this is the main reason why I do not like, even in the store, you kind of go up to the counter and you're like, "Hey, can I open it here?" And usually they'll be like, "Yeah," and you'll look in, you'll see it is right and correct, and then you're like, "Okay, now let me purchase it."
Yeah. I'm not interested in those those figures where you gotta, take a chance on what the hell you get. Like, I'm looking to pay for this, so this is what I want. And what are your all thoughts on, like these toy fairs and conventions? Maybe it's a sign of the times, but it feels like these big shows are becoming less and less important. Everything's moving to digital. I know, Mr. Storm, you were covering the last the PulseCon, but do you think it's the end of an era? Do you think that we'll see these small things, but it'll be more very, very localized, small mom and pops, and the Mattels, the Hasbros really doing their stuff online?
Well, I think what's killing the Mattel and Hasbro scenario right now is, one, that they are putting out merchandise that a lot of people aren't purchasing. I know Mattel should be really hurting, because Mattel, that whole Jurassic Park and everything, I see all that, like you said, in clearance, I see that in clearance all the time. And I think that the Hasbro and the larger toy companies are doing the same thing that the streamers did. When everything switched to streaming, you had Disney Plus that said, "And this item will only be on Disney Plus. This item will only be on Paramount Plus." Well, Hasbro's doing their own convention, and then I'm sure at one point Mattel's going to do some kind of Mattel creation convention, and they're hurting themselves, because either you like Mattel or you like Hasbro, or it's rare that have somebody. There's people that's loyalists. There's some people that won't like actually purchase anything from another item. And I think with the toy fair, and there's a rumor that Mattel wanted to not have it in New York. There's a point that they want to push it to the West Coast, to Los Angeles. And I think that there's maybe a natural switch to change it. And I think consciously they're trying to apply pressure to these conventions, because where does Mattel have to go? Mattel has to, their corporate center is in El Segundo, but trying to pack toys, go all the way to New York, a small city, well, a small, I think, logistic-wise city, because everything is like, rarely cars, everything's more expensive, there's tolls and everything else, just to try to get to a convention. And you think out here in California, which is, we've got our own issues with gas and traffic and everything, but you're not driving or flying thousands of miles and shipping products thousands of miles to be there for a weekend. So I think that there's going to be some changes, because when I'm looking at the New York Toy Fair, it looks, first of all, this is the first time I believe in 2.5 years that they're actually back in person. Second, it's normally that convention's held earlier in the year, because the New York Toy Fair is not for like the casual fans. It's not like we're walking in and we're looking at toys. Technically, it's for a lot of the mom and pops and retailers to see the item there and see what they're going to be purchasing towards the middle of the year and the end of the year. So it's really it's not like a convention like San Diego. There's items that are there and you can purchase possibly most of them. This is just a display. Like, this is what the items we think are going to be coming out at the end of the year. This is what you should be ordering now. It's more for retailers. So, I can understand the switch, but I think it's going to hurt them in the long run.
I don't know about that, because I read somewhere, I think it was like 70% of all the toy manufacturers are out here in California, in the US. So it makes more sense for the big companies to have it out here, because it's just, less of a logistical thing like you're talking about. But also, like this weekend in New York, it's flooded. The streets of New York, you can't get through. I don't know if you've seen the news.
You need a canoe to get to the convention.
So, it's like, probably that is cutting down on all the people showing up that would be there, this weekend.
This is not a convention for people. It's a convention for retailers.
Well, right, but if the retailers can't get there, it doesn't matter.
Here's the thing where I think that's kind of like on the moot point, where if it's just for retailers, they're going to be there. They're going to be there. They're going to send a representative. They don't care how he gets there, how they get into the hotel, how they get into the.
They're just going to have to get. They're going to have to get Scuba Steve to show up, and I'm here.
As long as they get it done, and I think that's the effect that they're having, is that now it has gotten to be where there's a lot more toy vloggers and YouTubers and people that are covering the convention, and it seems like they want to grow it bigger. Again, you're in downtown New York. Imagine if you're in downtown Los Angeles. It's a different vibe, man.
Yeah, and more space. Yeah. To do whatever you want. Everyone could have a bigger display area, And I think something like the Toy Fair actually doesn't really do anything for the bigger guys. It helps people like Super 7 and, all the smaller companies, Valaverse, all that. Because they're actually getting their stuff shown on the same level as all the other big companies.
Well, Super 7 had it. I've been looking online for the last couple of days, because I guess that's why I'm the online component to these conventions all over the place. But Super 7's booth is amazing. It's not as nice to their San Diego booth, obviously space-wise, but they're the most eye-catching. I've seen their sell toys. I've seen the Four Horsemen Studios. Their stuff looks fantastic. Those guys can really sculpt to make some great figures. And then I'm looking at some of the other companies like McFarlane. McFarlane's booth looks underwhelming. It's like they've got some characters up, but it's like the aesthetics is not the same way. So, maybe he's in the same boat too, because he's jumping this stuff from Phoenix, Arizona, going to New York. So maybe they might see a change if they actually move it to California.
Maybe they move to Vegas and people blow their wad at the tables and have to start selling their figures for cash, and you leave empty-handed. All the shit that you bought collectibles-wise, you fly back with nothing because you decided to put your exclusive Darth Vader on the table. Let me put it on 65 red.
I think it'd be a more interesting convention because there'd be a lot of toy company executives drunk.
Well, first of all, I think you just invented a great new game, which is, you have you do craps or roulette or something like that. And it's like, okay, I've got my Marion Ravenwood still in the box. I'm going to put that on 5 red. And it's like, I got my Luke Skywalker still in the box. I'm going to put that, up against yours.
I can see it like the Las Vegas Toy Convention, sponsored by DraftKings.
Well, I would just say I would love to see cosplay happening at the blackjack tables.
Oh,
you got Lou Ferrigno next to Darth Vader, next to Spider-Man, who bought his costume at Spirit Halloween, and they're all gambling.
What?
This could be a future show. I'll be honest with you.
I would like to see that too. And chances are there's already characters at the table. It'd just be Marvel characters this time around.
All right. Well, let me just put this out there. If we get a lot bigger, we can go somewhere like an a California casino and have our own thing. We could, rent out the pachanga. We just need a couple.
Night. Yeah, gamble and cosplay.
This could be an idea that's stolen. If I see this in a reality show in the next couple of years, you just know where it came from. Okay, you know where it started. I can't. I mean, we'll see. I think it's a great idea. We're gonna segue to some film and TV. Again, we love talking about toys, but let's talk about probably one of the hottest shows on TV as it comes to the comic book sci-fi fandom world is Ahsoka. The end is near of this season. We've seen a lot of cool characters. I think it's starting to develop, gain even some more momentum. What'd you all think about last episode? Again, spoiler alert for those of you who have not watched it. We're going to jump into episode 7 here for a few minutes. But what are your thoughts? How are you feeling overall about the series? And anything you're feeling? There's a ton of rumors of where this is going. So episode 8, the final conclusion, coming up next week. But how was episode 7 in the old series in your opinion?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I'll say that it's more inventive than the entire sequel trilogy, right? It's like they pretty much just reused the same type of action scenes and set pieces that all the other 6 movies before it did. Ahsoka has done different types of fights, different settings, and it is again just more like a George Lucas Star Wars than we've seen in a while.
I agree. Like I said again, his proper successor is running the show, and that's Dave Filoni. And it's great visual effects. I think there's the fight scene with the 2 Jedi Masters is fantastic. There was a little intrigue. It was a little bit more flair than you normally see with, I think the last time I saw something like that was like when Darth Maul met like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and it was the same exact way. It was a Bushido-ish kind of like, samurai kind of scenario that kind of went between the two. There was the action was a little bit more. The one thing I was disappointed in is that you basically had Ezra who refused to use the lightsaber.
No, I'm serious.
And you're like, what's going on? It's like this. He was the Jedi. He was like, oh no, you keep it. And I was like, okay,
Well, he hasn't used a lightsaber in 10 years or whatever, So he's probably thinking she's had a little bit more training and is more proficient today than he is not having picked one up in 10 years.
Nah, that was just a writer's trope, man. Come on, you know what that is.
But he was pushing people around. That was cool as hell.
I will say this. I think like Ezra brings a bit of a dynamic to it, where it's like the comedic part of it, like the series is very serious in nature, right? Like very stoic characters, and so his arrival, it's a little lighthearted, which I think was definitely needed. So I'm looking forward to see how that evolves. But I will also say, I know there was some, we talked about Thrawn, and I know Dr. Brantley, you had talked about it didn't seem as menacing as, the animation, which I agree with. But I did think what was really cool about this last episode is you saw like his military strategy, very like manipulation, like can see 7 moves beyond anyone else. And so I think that to me was like, okay, that's why you fear Thrawn. Maybe he's not, the evil, the Vader, the Sith Lord, but in terms of like understanding how to plot things and really build strategy to take over planets and galaxies, I thought that really showed up, which was really awesome to see. So I'm enjoying it. What do you all? There's a lot of rumors out there about, is Luke Skywalker gonna end up showing up here? I don't know if you've all seen, but the fans are really digging into this, and they saw Balin scrolls on his arm There was a list of those digits. What's the start? What's the language? I forget the language is, but they translated it, and it was like it said Luke and Han, and people were like, was that Filoni just putting a little thing in there like an Easter egg, but it's not going anywhere? Or does it mean like Baylan Skoll's trying to like seek revenge somehow? How is this going to take shape? Any thoughts on like where this is headed? It's got to come to a really strong conclusion.
Yeah, I think the Luke Skywalker thing is just that's a fan's want list. I don't see him popping up.
Well, it doesn't make sense. They're in a different galaxy.
Well, you know, Luke Skywalker is Luke Skywalker. He wants to show up.
He's jumping on a whale. That's the only way to get there.
Hey, if Ahsoka did well, you don't think Luke could? But no, I just think that's a fan's wish list. You know, because it's just like in the Mandalorian, the two different seasons when Luke showed up. You know, I'm thinking that they're like, okay, well, Luke's going to pop in. No, I can see in maybe season 2, if there's a season 2, which there's a good chance it's probably going to be. I could see Luke Skywalker showing up, and I think this one you just keep it with the Rebel characters, and you know, I think that's just the fans' want list, and I can understand it, but I don't think that's going to happen, man.
Now that is a cool thing you're talking about with the names on his arm, because one of the things that could be is that some point during the original trilogy, Han, Luke, and Leia killed his family or something, you know. And he was in hiding or whatever, and, you know, because he survived all this way after, you know, the fall of the Empire. So, you know, they could have done something in like Empire or Return of the Jedi, and he's, you know, written their names on his arm in tattoos like, okay, this is my list. It's like the death list for Kill Bill.
Mm-hmm.
It would be cool. Yeah, I don't know how it ties in. We know that the actor has passed away, and so if there's any future role for this particular character, obviously it'll need to be replaced. But I think at the end of the day, he's been the most fascinating for sure. And we don't know, but he's definitely, I don't know if he's double-crossed Thrawn, but it looks like he's on his own path, right? And so I think that to me is, I'm more excited about that than anything else on the show, which it's an Ahsoka series, but it's like you care more about one another character, which it's okay. But I think it's been really great the past couple of episodes. It's definitely picked up steam. And I would just say maybe Luke Skywalker changes his name to Luke Whale Rider, and he comes in and you know, we have a massive sky whale fight. Who knows? But
that would be awesome.
They spent a shit ton of money on those damn whales. I gotta be honest with you. I mean, I see. I know where the budget went with that. We always go back to Secret Invasion, and I know Mr. Brantley said they reshot it 40 times, but I didn't see the CGI money.
No,
I know where they spent the money in this one, so I gotta say that for sure. Other film-related stuff. A big rumor, speaking of massive franchises, has been the possibility of Christopher Nolan at the helm of the Bond franchise. And not just one, but a handful of movies. And the rumor is wanting full control, but also going back to like the original like story and character, and looking at some of those books and just like taking it back to like perhaps like, you know, the Casino Royale, the first one, and not the one that was just revisited with Daniel Craig. What's your take? Christopher Nolan did an amazing job with Batman, re-energizing that franchise to now where we'll see. I mean, I don't know where the future of Batman holds, but since Nolan's left, there's some hits or misses there. But him at the helm of Bond, does it make sense? Do you think it's going to happen? I'd be excited, but get your thoughts on it.
Well, we already had this conversation earlier today, and we have very different views on it. Now, let me say, I think it would be fantastic, because so far, Chris Nolan has not done anything. Like, there's, you know, some that are better than others, but nothing has been outright bad. And him with Bond, do, the kind of budget he can do, the world building and the action that he does is very different than any other filmmaker working right now. So I would love to see that. I would love to see the old school, like a 1960s James Bond movie, because I've read the original books and all the movies are very different. I think the closest one might actually be the Casino Royale, where they actually stuck to a lot of that. I don't know. I would be excited for that kind of a thing, but Mr. Storm has other ideas.
Yeah, no. See, I think you've taken on this time. You brought him into the modern era. I thought the Daniel Craig series did a great job of re-examining and adding in Casino Royale and some of the classic, the original ones that Ian Fleming might have done. So we've seen this before. We've seen Casino Royale now several different times, and I'm not interested to see Bond in the 1960s and doing a period piece. And I know it's Christopher Nolan. I think he's a great director. He's probably one of these best directors on the planet at the moment. But I want to see a modern take on James Bond. I want to see him in the actual era. And I just don't think that you're going to, I'm not interested to see a period piece. I think there's directors like him and Tarantino that just love that classic way. Well, that era's over with. Let's keep it into the modern era. Let's get some characters out there. Let's see your take on James Bond with the new climate of Russia and China and all these other countries. That's what I'm looking forward to see. So yeah, again, like I said, we did have a major discussion about this morning when we were going over the whole topics of the show, and I was like, I love Christopher Nolan. I love his work. I think he revitalized Batman in the best way you could possibly do.
Swear to me.
But I'm not interested to see a period piece with James Bond and him doing. And I think giving him full control is gonna be a problem.
Now, see, the thing about being set in that time period is that you don't have all the modern tropes. There's no, computers or phones or thing like that you have on your body. So he actually would have to be doing his spycraft and figuring out different ways to deal with the situation other than, I got this fancy gadget,
Yeah, see, there's a difference. Like I think the when it was in Casino Royale, they hit that issue. He didn't have a lot of the technology. It was all kind of done. And then he does other movies like Quantum of Solace and things like that, where he actually had moved more into using some of the modern stuff. I think that it's the grasp of technology. We don't want to see a clear-cut spy movie. We don't want to see him going through and digging. We want to see the gadgets. We want to see the cars. We want to see the next piece of technology. We want to see that Bond villain that now holds the world in his hands in a different way. Maybe the Bond villain's using AI or something to take over. You never know, but I'm not interested in seeing a Cold War piece. I've seen that. Sean Connery did a great job of that.
Well, he only did 4 or 5, right? So
did a great job in 4 or 5 movies.
I think that there's a lot you can do. That because now the modern spy thriller has been done to death. There's like 20 of them on Netflix, that they've got all sorts of people doing. Gal Gadot just had one. There was the thing with Ryan Reynolds and The Rock. There's the thing with Ryan Gosling. They've had all these things of modern spy type stuff with all the gadgets. I think it's a different way to go, and it would have its own unique flavor that's different from any of the other Bonds we've seen before.
Well, no, it's not different because Sean Connery did it.
No, but you do it different than that. That's what I'm saying. You do a different type of movie.
Here's what I would say is I think Christopher Nolan would do a fantastic job. And I think, the argument could be made, does it make sense to do it current state or in the 60s? I think is equally as important is who is cast at Bond. Because I will tell you, one of the films that was a bit iffy for me in Nolan's portfolio was Tenet.
Yes.
And I think part of it was the actor. I'll be honest. And I know, Washington, he's a good actor. I didn't think he was great in that film. In fact, I think if you put somebody else in his role, that movie would have been better. So I think it boils down to not just Nolan, but like who is actually going to be Bond. And there's some rumors about who he would cast. I think that's just as important. And we could spend all night talking about who the next Bond should be. I personally think it would either era, he would knock it out of the park. I think he is by far the best director right now. Like just the diversity of his films, his writing, cinematography. I love that he doesn't rely on CGI hardly ever. It's real practical effect. Like all these things are really great. But I think you're going to need the right actor. And if you could find that person, I think it would really be great. But I don't know. It's hard. Like I think Daniel Craig did an amazing job.
Yes.
But I don't know, if you're going to go back in the 60s, I don't think he possessed the charisma of a Sean Connery. So whoever you select, if you're going back to that era, you need an actor of that era, someone that you would feel would be a star in the 60s. And there's few and far between of those actors right now. So, and you can't put a newbie in there, right? You need some star power. So I don't know who that is. Like, again, we could talk all night about it, but you throw some of these action guys that have been not, Idris Elba has been mentioned and some of these other, it's just not, that's not the feel of that era. You need someone, and I don't know who that is, but that would be my 2 cents. Either way, I think it's going to be very hard for the Broccoli family to like really give over the full, and I'm not saying full control of the franchise, but Nolan wants to do his thing. And so I think that to me doesn't feel like that would happen.
Well, here's the thing the argument that Dr. Brentley and I had was, why don't create your own version of Bond? Not exactly Bond, and do your movie. This is what I think these modern filmmakers have this extent. This is how I want to see it, and this is how I want it done. You have the leverage to walk into any studio in Hollywood and say, I want to do a 1960s Cold War spy movie, and you could do it. So why take an existing character? It's the same way whenever somebody comes in with a brand new take. Okay, we're going to switch this character from what it is, and we're going to do this. Do your own character. Write your own movie. Shape them in that way. When they were talking about Michael B. Jordan as Superman, I personally did not want to see Michael B. Jordan as Superman. I'm like, look, that's not the character that I read in the comics, even though there's an alternate version of that. It's like, that's not what I want to see. So if you're going to do that, do your own film. Michael B. Jordan has Superman-like powers. He's in his own movie. That's fine. But these filmmakers constantly come in and they do like, all right, we're going to swap this character. We're going to do this thing and everything. It's like, look, the original material is the original material for a reason.
Well,
but once we've got them to this new era, let the new era play itself out.
It's the studios, though, that are ultimately, because if you're going to spend $200-300 million on a movie, you're not going to spend it on an original. You're going to spend it on something that I already know I can sell this many tickets because it's James Bond, and, this many people will go. We can get this many deals on cars and watches and all this other stuff.
You're gambling. You're gambling if Christopher Nolan's 1960s Bond is going to get millennials and everyone else to go into the theater. Now, you may get people our age or older, boomers, to go in there, but you're asking for an era where we basically are being pushed out of the demographic of what's hot and what's not, to do something where you might not get people in the theater. So it's a gamble either way.
But Warner Brothers had Christopher Nolan. They had Oppenheimer as his next movie, and they were like, nobody's going to want to see this. Oh, forget it. Goes to Universal. It becomes like the biggest movie of his career next to The Dark Knight, right? So
you're giving an argument on a one hit thing for him. Oppenheimer did well, so his next movie that he wants to go back in the past is going to do well. It's the same extent of this Martin Scorsese situation, where it's like, oh, okay, Scorsese's last film did great. This one's going to do great, and we're gambling all this money on it. But you're not going with the consumers in the market, younger viewers. You wonder why we're losing fandom. It's because we got all these old guys that want to go back to a different era, when this era, it's fine. You're going to take Bond into the 60s and all the other things that happened in the 60s that we're not going to get into, but it wasn't too pleasant for everyone in the 1960s. And you're going to put them in that era. And the new fans are going to go in there and say, okay, well, is he going to be, the Sean Connery version of James Bond? Because that's not going to play well to a lot of people, man.
I will say what they need to do is, what does Bond look like 50 years from now in the year 2073? Has they ever done a future Bond? That'd be kind of interesting. I'm not saying Nolan should do it, but I think you all making interesting points, and we'll see how it plays out. I think we'll stay close to it, right? Like with updates and rumors and stuff. But it's pretty amazing to hear a big
Oh,
director wanting to take over the franchise. And I know Amazon is behind this as well. I read. So Amazon money, if they want something to happen, it could very well happen as well. So
I want him to come in to them, and his pitch is, I want to do James Bond Jr.
James Bond the animation.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to let him. You know what? They may let him do it, but begrudgingly they'll let him do that.
Okay, on to one of my favorite topics that we do pretty regularly here on the cast is a best of series. We've done swords, we've done lightsabers, we've done guns, we've done the top, billion-dollar films, and this week we're going to jump into the best starships, spaceships in cinematic television history. This is gonna be pretty big because there's a lot of iconic starships. So we're gonna jump into that. Are you all excited about talking about this? Because I know some of you may have some models or some toys of these starships or spaceships. I know I do as well. So let's jump into it. Really excited to talk about the greatest, the best starships, spaceships of all time, cinematic television history. I know there's a bunch in the past 50, 100 years, but let's kind of narrow it down to the top 5 of all time. But let's throw some suggestions out there. I'm going to go first. I think it's an easy one, and if it isn't in your top 3 or top 5, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, and that is the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, sir.
One of the most iconic starships of all time. So iconic that it made a comeback in the newer Star Wars. It's the one that was most desirable when I was a little kid, and I just couldn't get my hands on because I don't know how it costs so much goddamn money. And if you try to buy the Lego one that you build, you got to cash out your 401k to afford it. But the Millennium Falcon is definitely one of my choices to be in the top 5. Yes. What about y'all?
Well, I was 8 years old when The Empire Strikes Back came out, and my Christmas was a snowspeeder, the Slave One, which they've renamed apparently because Disney doesn't want to even have that, at all. And the Millennium Falcon. And the Millennium Falcon was like the best present I may have ever gotten. It was cool as hell. But my favorite, I think, has got to be the USS Enterprise. I've always been a Star Trek fan. I never understood why some people like, oh, Star Wars or Star Trek, you can't like both. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? They're very different, not anything like each other. They're not stepping on each other's toes. And it's just one of the coolest designs for a spaceship I've ever seen, and it's one of the first that ever came out.
Yep. Yeah. Iconic design. It's like right up there with Millennium Falcon, right? Like you see it, you know what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, I'm gonna say, let's see. I'm gonna pull it a little different from films. I'm gonna say that the first time I saw it was completely different. It's a transformer and a ship at the same time. It's from Robotech, the SDF-1. It's a very iconic ship. Every time you see it, it's fantastic. It has a great opening to the show, and I think anybody, fans of our generation, will know that the minute they see it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, there's so many different Star Wars ones that we can throw in there. That'll be a hard one. Like, I think Millennium Falcon's there. You've got like 7 or 8 different Star Wars ships that we could probably argue about.
Star
but
Destroyer.
I think Star Destroyer
Mhm.
and the TIE Fighter
Yes.
are like neck and neck, right? Like those to me are iconic. Like everyone knows. All the other ones, you'd have to be kind of more of a Star Wars fan, but I feel like the Star Destroyer and TIE Fighter, most of the general audience knows those are like iconic Star Wars ships.
And see, I would throw in from the Star Trek side, the Borg cube, simplistic, but everybody sees it, and the Klingon bird of prey.
Yep.
Bird of prey is nice.
And if you go out of the Star Trek one, you go to another space odyssey that was a little before the time. And from Battlestar Galactica, the Galactica itself.
And the Vipers. The Vipers are cool as hell. That was a great design.
Well, it would only be fitting based on my my background here if I didn't not mention the Nostromo from Alien, which is definitely a legendary starship as well. I would fight for that to be in the top 5, but I know there's a bunch of others we haven't talked about.
I'll give a piece of animation wise, another one from one of the most iconic series that you can kind of see is the Bebop from Cowboy Bebop.
Okay. Serenity, the Firefly class ship.
Yep. What about that crazy ass ship from Event Horizon where all that crazy shit went down? I don't even know the name.
Well, I think it was the Event Horizon. That was the name of the ship.
I think it was. That was the name of the ship. Yes, it was.
I remember that movie. It's a pretty damn iconic movie when it comes to stuff that goes on a spaceship, but maybe not so much the actual starship itself.
I would say one that's not iconic, but I remember as a kid was the Buck Rogers from the Buck Rogers in 25th Century. The one Gil Gerard used to fly around in. I can't remember what that was called too, but it was a ripoff of like probably anything with Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica. I know that. And then I think one season they had a giant hawk that they were flying in space for that too.
There's the Discovery one from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yep.
I mean, that is a weird ship, but it was based on what they thought long travel space flight would need. It's like there's a living space at the front, all the junk that's the entire length of the ship, and then a gigantic engine at the back. There's like the Lost in Space type of ships, all the flying saucer type things, and those are a dime a dozen. There's a bunch of those kind of things, but these ones we're talking about, you can tell what they are just by the outline.
So I would say probably in this case, it's some of the winners would be between what's Star Wars and Star Trek, because I'm pretty sure that they shape everyone's identity every time you see it. You know the outline of the Enterprise, you know the outline of an X-wing. It's kind of hard to debate, but they're probably the top two to have starships out.
Would you consider a U.S. based space shuttle a starship like the Apollo 13? Would that be considered?
I mean, it's
iconic.
A spaceship.
So I'd have to throw. I mean, that would definitely be in the mix.
It would.
A Saturn rocket with the Apollo 13 on the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It doesn't have phasers. It doesn't have photon torpedoes.
Or at least what the U.S. government told us they don't.
Well, that's true. They could have all sorts of shit we don't know about. And I know you guys can't see this, but I have my Star Trek 3 glass with the destruction of the Enterprise on it.
Well, actually, that's probably another best of series, the best starships being destroyed.
What about Close Encounters of the Third Kind ship?
I think I think that falls in the same vein as E.T. It's still a one-off, And I think the only problem is there's a generation of people that probably still has not seen that movie yet either.
That's true. That's true.
E.T.'s ship at least, could have rainbows after it, when it flies away.
What do you think about? I don't know the name, but it's the Space Marines and Aliens. Their ships.
Yes, that was the Sulaco.
Yeah, Sulaco.
But also, I think that's one of the ugliest ships ever.
It is
because it's just like, I don't know. It looks like sort of a trapper keeper with a bunch of pens sticking out the top of it or something.
See, I always thought it looked like a Swiss Army knife
with everything open.
But it's the spaceship of Space Marines. What about Starship Troopers? Their main ships.
Those were pretty cool.
Those are cool. I don't know any of the names of them though.
So here's interesting. We said Star Destroyer, but the name of the first ship in the line of Superstar Destroyers and Vader's personal flagship was called the Executor.
Oh.
So would we say Star Destroyer? Would we say the one that Vader was on? So I'm gonna go and say Superstar Destroyer.
Star Destroyer. Too bad when you start thinking about all these spaceships and everyone else, you notice that none of the Pope eras, like Buck Rogers ship, or none of those make it on because no one remembers those as much, But I remember as a kid watching the old serials with Buck Rogers and seeing the ship, and I really think that the new era has done a really great job. When you look at Star Trek and the history it's been in, and Star Wars for as long as it's been. And like, there's a whole culture of people that know their ships. There's even online YouTube channels devoted to the ships. And I don't know if anybody's played that Star Trek Online. Man, they go deep dive. I have to say, the Defiance from Deep Space Nine is on that list, man.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's pretty easy. We've got a few that definitely we're all on the top 5. Millennium Falcon is in the top 5. USS Enterprise is in the top 5.
Yes.
Are we aligned on at least those two?
Yes.
Yeah.
In there. Okay. Now, do we want to say of any of the Star Wars ships, is it the Star Destroyer? Is it the TIE Fighter? Is it the X-Wing? Do any of those belong in there?
I think the X-Wing, just because of its design, and people know that's the starship
with R2
Jedi.
With R2 as a co-pilot.
With R2, it's got to be the Astro Droid R2, man. No, except no equals.
I agree with that. I think the X-Wing for sure.
The Razor's Crest in the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before they replaced it with the pseudo replacement Naboo starfighter that he uses now, but the Razor's Crest was a great design and a great ship, man.
We've got 3, right? We've got the X-Wing in there. We've got the USS Enterprise, and we've got Millennium Falcon. We've got 2 left.
I'd probably go with the Star Destroyer as well.
Yeah, I agree. The Star Destroyer sneaks in as the 4th. And who is the 5th?
I'm saying iconic wise, and that people see it and they know it. The image is menacing. I gotta say the Borg cube. You see that, you know it on screen. You know they're menacing. It's the most simplest design, but it's a bad shit, brother.
Does the TIE Fighter get in the top 5? I mean, if we're putting the X-Wing, does the TIE Fighter get in there? And what we basically would be saying is 4 of the 5 are from the Star Wars universe.
I would think that the TIE Fighter is, but if you're going to do that again, I would say probably the Klingon Bird of Prey is up there over the TIE Fighter almost. Because it's whenever you see that, and number one, it cloaks. 2 is every time you see it, it has that feel of like when you expect to see the Enterprise, you expect to see a Bird of Prey show up.
Yeah.
And, we only said the original Enterprise. There is the Enterprise D from Next Generation. Also the Voyager, which I thought was a really cool looking ship. Because it was streamlined and it had that same shape-ish, but it was just more modernized and sleek and more of like a fighting ship.
And see, I always liked the design. I know people didn't like the show as much, but the original Enterprise, I think was at the X1
and X01, yeah.
Yeah, that was a great design and look. Just people the series was a little controversial with people, but I love the iconic look of that.
The Reliant Khan had that ship.
Obviously. Yeah. Whenever you think of that, you think of two things: Fantasy Island and Starship blowing up.
I still think the TIE Fighter, just overall, I think.
And it's got the sound to go with it.
Yeah,
it's an iconic sound more so than any of the other ships.
Yes. Yep. And perhaps because the franchise lives on and TIE Fighters is showing up at almost every show, and so is the X-Wing. So, I hate to say it, but I think outside of the USS Enterprise, I think 4 of the 5 I would put, they come from the Star Wars universe. We expanded to 10. We've got some Star Trek in there. We might have Galactica, but if you have to hard commit to 5, I think it's Star Wars. I mean, what about? Let's go back to the '80s. We could go. What's the last Starfighter? And there's so many, right? We can expand upon, but I think Star Wars just dominates the cool starships and the iconics.
Well, the beautiful thing about the Best of series is that it's not just our opinions; it's the listeners' opinions. And we've been getting that all through the comments and everything else. So, if you felt like we missed something, which they obviously, every time we do this, we do miss something, drop that comment. Let us know what we missed.
And I know you gamers out there, you're going to hit us up with Mass Effect, and we're going to hear Halo. We get it. Drop it in. We like games too, but we're talking film and TV, but feel free. I know animation, we're probably going to hear.
Again, I thought the SDS-1 is just iconic on the aspect of that you see that. So yeah, the animation world is definitely going to hit us back on that. But that's what we like. We like these shows are the Best of series is made for debating.
Yep.
Wing Commander.
Definitely. Ooh, yes, I love it.
It is.
I love it. Well, I think we narrowed down the top 5, but we'd love to hear you all in the comment section. Feel free to drop a comment if you're watching this on the Shadowe Knows YouTube channel. This is Shadow Crew Podcast. We always appreciate you all listening and tuning in each and every week. So subscribe, like, all the things to help the channel grow. But I'm sure next episode there's going to be a couple starships we're like, shit, we missed the ball on, and that's okay. We're not the experts, but we love to debate. So last words, Mr. Storm, Dr. Brantley.
Obviously, as always and everything, I wanted to give a special thanks out to our sponsor, Toys vs. Games in Wilmington, California. Toys vs. Games. It's always great that they're sponsoring its Shadowe's home store. He is always in there, and actually look for some of his videos to be shot from there. So when you're thinking about, we're complaining about the Targets, the Walmarts, you want to go to the places that basically respect the fans, and you get a personalization from that. Toys vs. Games is going to give you that personal perspective and feeling like when you're not some cold-blooded corporation that's just sending stuff in the mail and they don't care. These people are going to take care of your packaging. They're going to get you a experience that you think that you really deserve. So when you're looking to spend some of that hard-earned dollars, and everybody's dollars is hard, spending at a shop that really cares about you. It's Toys vs. Game. We like the Shadow Crew. Would like to say thank you for sponsoring us. It's a pleasure to have them.
I would much rather be getting my exclusives from Toys vs. Games than from Target. I'll tell you that.
We'll have Shadow ask him about that too, man. We'll tell them be on the lookout for Club Ugly, man.
And I will say on the behalf of Mr. Chet Maddox, who did not attend this week's podcast, I'm going to represent probably his thoughts as a massive Transformers fan. Starscream probably isn't a starship, but if he if he wants to include that, I'm sure he would have had an argument that it belongs in the top 5. For the Shadow crew, thanks for tuning in, listening. We'll see you all next week. Like and subscribe. See you later.
Bye.